Thank you, Chris. So Chris has this, probably the nicest college setting to teach at. Overlooks the Umpqua River and it's a beautiful spot. It's pretty nice out here though too. So I'm involved, some of my consulting, both California and in Oregon, is involved with vineyard development. And we've seen a lot of changes over the years. Used to be you run out, get a soil sample, put soil amendments on, and rip it 3 ways with 5 feet down, and that's it. But we've done a lot of different things in the last few years. Certainly some of you guys, and some of the things I'm going to talk about today, you guys may even already do, may not be new to you. Certainly some of the equipment and stuff here is that I'm going to be talking about is actually out demonstrated here, so I won't go into too much detail with that. So this was a vineyard in southern Oregon, just outside of Jacksonville, and they had a company come in to do soil samples. They basically went every couple hundred feet, took a soil core and did the chemistry on that, and GPS every hole or every site they went to. And by doing that, they're able to create these maps for different materials. This one is for gypsum additions. So in the past, you would just broadcast, 2 or 3 tons of gyp, and this one it actually there's no pointer. So you can see, well, the greenish area is about 1 ton of gypsum, and the reddish area it's recommending about 10 tons. So if you're, you can selectively spread that and actually get a better representation of what the vineyard really needs. And that's really what you're looking for. So you're looking for even growth, even as much uniformity in the soil to start with as you can. Okay, and then also, backhoe pits. You still need to go out and do, backhoe pits down to about 5 feet to see what's out there. And this is a typical Carneros in Napa soil where you have about 3 feet of, pretty nice clay loam, pH is 5.5 to 6, and then you have this kind of yucky clay, really tough to grow things through, and usually the pH is 4.5 to 5. So if you were to, rip this thing to 5 feet, you'd be pulling up all that clay that you don't want. So you can it's better to selectively rip that, maybe only 30, 36 inches, something like that. Okay, this is similar, where you have the topsoil's down 2.5 to 3 feet, and then you hit kind of a sandstone layer there that, you may or may not want to pull up. So, these are the things you need to look at before you start developing your vineyard. Okay, so one of the things that we're doing differently nowadays, I know some of you may have even used this up here. It's a winged tine ripper, and you only rip down the vine row. So instead of going 3 ways and ripping up the field, you just go down the vine row. And this actually allows the vines to grow more uniformly because it's all getting ripped down the row. If you're ripping 3 ways, you can actually, believe it or not, you can actually miss certain areas in your vineyard and not get it ripped. And it's also better for the whole soil structure in general than, because usually when we did the old style ripping, it was done when it was as dry as possible so that you could get some, breakage in the ground. But with this one, you actually rip it usually in the spring after the rains have stopped for a couple weeks. So you want to be just less than field capacity. So it's actually a different style, and it actually does a very good job. And with this one, there's also an arm that will also shake that, so it makes it a little better rip. But underneath it does a real good job of ripping. And this is all GPS. So all you do is lay out the first row, and then their onboard computer figures out if you want to, like a 6-foot row, then it'll go. It has it all set. You don't have to lay out the whole field for that. Okay, then, some of the things you guys probably use this NDVI photos, which will, they do a flyover, kind of later in the season, it's able to tell, what your growth is like in certain areas. If you have more growth in one area, less in the other, then it's a way of trying to even that out in the field, either with irrigation or fertilizer or other things. Okay, so this is a photo of a vineyard, also in Southern Oregon, and you can kind of see where the green areas are real heavy growth, and the lighter areas, the reddish and brown are actually very poor growth. Ideally, you'd want to get those as even as possible so that, all the fruit in your vineyard or in that block, you want to ripen at the same time. And if you have unevenness, then you won't have that. So typically, it is with irrigation or fertilizer that you can do that. So you can see, like at the top of the hill there's some weak areas, and the bottom is growing real vigorous. So ideally, you'd want to, if you're lucky enough to have your irrigation system starting on the top of the hill, then you can just put a valve, halfway down and close it off, and just irrigate the top for the first month or so, and then open it back up once it's evened out. If you don't have it at the top, then you have to actually put in like a dual system, so an extra hose per row, and then just close off the one and irrigate the top by itself. Okay, so it used to be, this is kind of old, was new technology at one time, the pressure bombs, or now there's several different ways of doing irrigation scheduling, but pressure bombs will tell you basically when your vines are starting to stress. So you want your vines to start stressing a little bit before you put any irrigations on. You don't want the vines to just be growing out of control. And I know a lot of you guys may not even irrigate or irrigate very little, but at some point, the better quality you can get is through actually stressing the vines a little bit. So pressure chambers will measure the leaf water potential, and it's related to vine stress, as I said. There are some limitations. You can only do it midday, so between 12 and 2, and it can't be cloudy, and it can't be too hot as well. So by using the pressure bombs, it tells you when to start, when they're stressing, and then you use an irrigation calculation is based on the ETO from a nearby weather station, or even better if it's in your vineyard. And then crop coefficients that are also available, but it's better if you can actually measure the shade under your canopy at midday, and that will help you. There's an equation you can use to figure out how much water to put on. And then you have to figure out also what deficit you want to irrigate at. So if you irrigate at 100% ET, then you would have a vine that would not stop growing. But usually you go 40 to 50%, or even less in some areas, of the actual amount that the vine used the week before. So that you're always working at a deficit, so that at the end the vines are pretty stressed. Okay, so this is some of the new techniques that are being used for irrigation scheduling. This is a group out of that started actually out of France, and it was a way that they put a sensor in, and it measures the sap flow. And the foil is really just more to protect the sensors. I guess they're very expensive sensors that they put on there, but they've been able to figure out from the sap flow how much water the vine's using and how much to irrigate it with. Okay, another method is a company that has a device that will measure the actual expansion of a shoot or a petio. And by doing that, they're also able to calculate how much to irrigate. But this is one of their devices where they actually are weighing an individual cluster. And so they're able to get a weight every 15 minutes. And in that way, they're testing it as a way to see when the weight starts going down towards the end of the season, and how much water you need to put back on to maintain that or to keep that from going down too fast. But, some of the interesting things that they found is that, after about 1920 bricks, you do actually see the weight going down as you get towards harvest, which probably some of you have noticed as well, especially if you're, deficit irrigating. You're going to lose a little weight. Okay, this last device is something that a graduate student at Davis started out, and then he's branched off on his own, and he's selling it now and it actually measures, I believe, the water vapor that comes across the vineyard, and by using that to compute the ETO, he feels it's a more accurate measurement to do that. So that's another new product. Okay, finally, there's this software program that is also a French group where they've done quite a bit of research over there, and they could actually tell you based on your soil texture, the rooting depth, and then the width and height of your canopy, how much to irrigate based on the ETO from a local weather station. So, you can see as you get towards the end of the season, so the black line, which you can barely see, it goes down as you get towards harvest. So in other words, the pressure bombs, the reading when you start irrigating is probably -10 or -12. As you get to the end of the season, it's closer to 14 or 15, which is kind of what you want, so you can follow that stress all the way through. So this is something that will probably be commercially available in the future. Okay, so with the rising cost of labor, we're thinking at least in Napa that we're probably going to have an 8% increase a year in labor costs. We're looking more towards mechanization, and one of the ones that really works well is a leafing. There's several leafing machines. I know this one. It's probably the same one out here actually. So you can talk to the rep who is also here. I think that the leafing machines work real well because we're actually seem to be in a trend where people want less leaves pulled. So these things do a real good job of that. I mean, they're nowhere near as thorough as a hand leaf or people going in and pulling leaves by hand, but they do an adequate job to open it up, just enough to let some discreet light in. And that's, it's a good thing but for mechanization, we're looking at, a lot of different areas, certainly even pruning and things like that. There's some, some of the big bulk wine areas in Central Valley have gone to basically no pruning, where they train vines up at 5 feet and then just box prune it mechanically. So they really have almost no labor costs. They don't sucker, they don't prune, by hand, and then they do everything by harvest by mechanical harvesters. So we're kind of getting into that stage where we need to take a real good look at that, and what the wineries will accept, is a big thing. But I think as we get better at doing the mechanical stuff, that it's going to be more prevalent. Okay, so harvesters, also, like the Blanc out here, is they're set up to do a lot of other things. I've seen them disc and mow, and certainly spraying is one that's fairly easy for these machines. And of course, the harvesting. So, the first generation harvesters were, so-so, but these new ones are so good that, they have the selective process machines will de-stem and, kick everything out so that you have a real clean pick. And these things are a lot better than they were before. And certainly they're, it's really up to the wineries to accept it, but it seems like more and more are. I know, Napa was one of the big holdouts for mechanical harvesting, and, they've come around now, and a lot more wineries are doing it. So I think that it's only a matter of time with the labor, crisis that we're in, that we're going to need to do more of this. Okay, and then finally, this is actually a picture of a drone helicopter, and the size is a little deceiving. That helicopter is about 3 feet long, so it's something that's radio controlled. The demonstration I saw was actually for spraying, so you know, you can go out when the leaves aren't, or when the shoots aren't too big, and the canopy's not too big, you can get the spray in. It's real, you know, low volume spraying at the time. But and there's a winery that's using some drones for aerial photography. So basically, they do a flyover once a month to be able to see what areas are weak or what areas need water or fertilizer. And I think we're going to see more of that, especially as the cost of these things go down. I'm not sure how the FAA is going to feel about that with all these things flying around the fields, but I'm sure they're working something up since everyone's going to have them in a little while. I think that, you know, as far as mechanization, like I said, I think it's, you know, we're going to see more of that. There's already robotic pruners they're working on. You know, we have cars now that can drive themselves and anti-collision devices. So it's only a matter of time before tractors as well are going to be included in that, and we'll have, you know, no need for drivers anymore. Maybe actually get a few less posts on the way. But so that's the end of my talk. If there's any questions, certainly, you know, if some of the viewers are here, you can ask them about their equipment. But are there any questions? Yeah, Bruce.
What do you think about a porometer? Do you use them?
I've used them in the past. I don't. The question was a porometer to determine vine stress. It's similar to pressure bombs, except you know, you read a leaf, kind of the same thing. I don't think it's as well defined as far as what the stress areas are, but pressure bombs seem to be more, I don't know, for me, more consistent. Yeah. Yes.
On pressure bombs, what was your zone of needing to irrigate? What bar did you need to see the stress level getting to the point where you decided to irrigate?
Usually it's about -10 bars for white grapes and about -12 for red, just because you want a little more stress. The white grapes can, I mean, usually want to irrigate a little earlier, but that's usually what I use. Then everyone's a little different on that, but that's my standard.
As we move toward greater and greater mechanization, do you have a magical spacing that you would recommend folks?
Oh, I don't know. I've certainly seen you know, over the years going from 12 to 10 to 8 was the magic going for a while, and then 6 seems to be the one now. It was all really geared for equipment at the time, I think, and you know, once you get narrower than 6, then it's all over the row. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you get to a point too where you're not increasing the yield anymore, then it's really not advantageous to have more vines in there. Although the nursery guys will probably argue. Okay, any more questions? Yeah, Chris.
So most of the moisture sensing that you were talking about was plant moisture sensing. Do people still look to soil moisture sensing? Is that still in the equation?
Yeah, there's still a fair amount of that going around. Used to be, you know, neutron probes were real big for a long time, and that they've kind of gone out of favor. But there are really good moisture sensing devices now that, you know, record every 15 minutes or something that actually are very good. But, you know, it's still, you know, one point source, one spot in the vineyard that you're monitoring. So it's more kind of to double check everything else that's going on.
But it seems like the sensor systems, when they're hooked up, they can also, like the plant moisture sensors can also read 15-minute or 20-minute or hour intervals. It's different than when you get neutron probe and you get a day, you know, the moisture that day, and then 2 weeks later when they come back again.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And a lot of them, you know, now you can hook up to weather stations or even to radio control devices where you can actually get, you know, same time readings, which is good.
Can you change your irrigation scheduling then in some way because you're getting so many readings?
No, I think if anything, it tells you, as far as irrigations, how efficient they are. So if you're irrigating once a week and the water's going through the root zone, then maybe you need to irrigate less water twice a week or something like that. They're good for that, but overall, I think, it's more of a way to double check what